Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Senor Nerd Podcast. I have here, as always, Ramon,
Hey guys.
Ro,
Howdy, howdy.
and we're here to talk about a Netflix show that came out in April. The show we're here to discuss is called Beef. And hopefully anybody that's listening to this has watched the show because we have a lot of positive things to say about it. My only problem is that, guys, my only problem with this show is that I didn't know it was coming out. Netflix didn't give me any kind of trailers. They don't promote their stuff. So unless you happen to turn on your TV, Netflix randomly on a Friday and see that, hey, we have a show that we added, there's no way in hell you would have even known this show came out, which pisses me off about Netflix because, I give them a lot of crap because they do release a lot of trash. But this is a show that's actually it was very, very well done. And there's a lot to talk about it. Hence the reason why we're doing this episode. And, Ramon, tell us why this show deserves more attention, outside of just your normal stuff that Netflix releases.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll kind of forgive Netflix a little bit if they come out with season two, even though I'm a little skeptical about what that could be about. But regardless, we should continue. So, I think I was the first one that out of us that kind of caught the show, and I think I was really eager to like get you guys to watch it. I was just really excited about the show. It kind of did, like you said, Carlos, took me by surprise. I think by the time I watched it, yeah, there was definitely a lot of already feedback out there. A lot of people just saying like, "Oh, it's good, it's good, it's good." But in my typical fashion, I just jump into it. Started watching it, first episode, obsessed with it. And I'll say the word obsessed because I think it's a show that I kind of needed. We sit here and we talk about like some nerdy shows, some movies, some awesome anime, like all kinds of stuff. But it's been a while that we kind of talked about something that kind of gets really deep. And I feel like this show did it as a dark comedy, like really, really dark comedy. They got into some great, great topics that I related to. I know a lot of people can relate to because we weren't talking about fantastical things. We weren't talking about like, sci-fi, anything like that. It's clear day to day life struggles and just kind of how we deal with them. And then the absurdity of what happens when, you road rage and then just can't stop trying to get revenge on the other person. But great show. I'm really excited to kind of dig into this show and just kind of see, what things really stuck out for us.
And I will say, I guess in defense of Netflix, so I didn't know that it was coming out. But that's because I do watch I watch a good amount of YouTube and stuff like that. So like interviews and Ali Wong and Stephen Young kind of did the rounds.
Yeah,
So
they
so
normally, because they
I
normally promote big like 2 weeks before even the show comes out, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
What
yeah, yeah.
Netflix likes
It
to
wasn't
do?
so long. Yeah, and then on Netflix too, I periodically go in and see what's upcoming, on my phone and watch those trailers, and then I set reminders and stuff like that because I'm a big nerd. Um, but yeah, so I didn't know that it was coming out, and then the weekend that it came out, I did watch like an episode and a half, and then like in the beginning I thought it was just like, oh, it's fine. And then when you suggested that, like, hey, we should talk about it because you were really into it, I thought like, oh, okay. But then like honestly, kind of watching it and continuing to watch it hooked me. It
Yeah.
definitely hooked me. But yeah, like in the beginning it was just like whatever, but it definitely grows and builds, and it's awesome. I liked it.
No, and Ro, you were mentioning like, we asked you to watch it. More specifically, like Ramon, you're the one that really like said like we need to do this because people are talking about it, and
I'm
Ramon,
glad.
you're in the ground actually, listening and talking to the people, So I'm glad that you brought it to our attention. Kind of like similar to you, Ro. I started, or actually more to you, Ramon. Like I actually started watching the show probably the weekend it premiere. And I think even when we saw each other, whether it was a week later, when you were like, hey, you need to watch the show, like I had probably already had finished it or was at the point of finishing it. So it's like you definitely didn't need to bring it to my attention. I think when I saw that some people were actually talking very positive about it on Twitter. That kind of brought it to my attention because it's very rare for people to be talking about a Netflix on Twitter. And when they do, it's like, okay, this must be very, very good. If people are actually saying like, hey, the acting is really good, the story is really good, the first episode really gets you involved with the characters. And honestly, the biggest reason why I started watching this show is I'm a big Stephen Young fan. Like I will support that guy in anything he does. And to this day, there's not one thing that he has done that I can say like, oh, that was trash, or he hasn't been picking his role, because I think ever since he did The Walking Dead, he's had a very successful career. And just to tell you how much like I love him, like this is a guy I watched The Walking Dead for 8 seasons, and when they decided to kill him, spoilers, just like they did in the comic,
No.
just like they did in the comic books, as soon as they got rid of
No.
him, like that's when I all of a sudden just like fell out of the show. So that to tell you that a show that's known for killing people all the time, and for them to just all of a sudden get rid of his character, and for me to say like I'm done with this, like that tells you that like his character meant a lot to me in that story. And ever since that, like he's been in a lot of cool, interesting projects. And the one that makes me really, really excited right now is that he's actually been cast in a Marvel role. Um, so he's going to be in one of the Marvel movies that's coming out later. I think maybe not this year, but next year, where it's like the group the Thunderbolts movie. Bro, you're kind of looking at me. So this is the Thunderbolts movie. He's going to be in that movie, and a lot of people are assuming that he's been cast as Amadeus Yo Show, and he's actually somebody that inherits the Incredible Hulk powers. But he, instead of being like Bruce Banner, where it's like, oh, I don't want to be the Green Hulk, and being the Green Hulk sucks, and I'm really sad about being the Hulk. He's actually a character that actually enjoys being the Hulk, and he can actually find the joy of being like turning into the Green Monster, being able to jump and do all these crazy abilities. So, I'm hoping that nothing but success. And I think after this role, who knows? We might be looking at some academy, some maybe not academy, yeah, some academy awards. I forget what it is they do for television, but I'm hoping that
Emmys.
this is the Emmys. I'm hoping that this show stays in the discussion, and then we do hear about it during that time, which is normally around October, because I think the show should stay in people's mind, even though Netflix has this thing of giving you all the episodes at once, and then after you binge them, you sort of forget about them. So I'm hoping that's not what happens with this show for some of these people.
I mean, I can't say that it's going to be forgettable for me. And again, I guess we could start like diving into it. But like, one of the things I don't know what it is. So, anyways, we'll just get started with the show starts right, and you start with Danny, who's Steven's character in this show. He's trying to return these little hibachi grills at this like not furniture store, this hardware store, and I think from the very beginning I'm like, oh, this is this guy trying to make some returns, right? Like I kind of involved in retail, so I kind of figured I'm like, oh, this guy's up to no good. I kind of see where the show's going right away. Me assuming everything in the first like seconds,
Yeah,
right?
I totally thought it was a scam.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So that kind of gave me the whole like, okay, this is what it's gonna be about. This is this guy who's kind of, trying to sneak away around, trying to make some extra money, right? And then later we find out it's super depressing, and obviously that's what I want to get to. But yeah, then he leaves the parking lot. He's trying to leave the parking lot after he gets denied the returns. And in that instance of him backing out of his parking space, and when he almost hits Amy's character, when he almost hit Amy's car or SUV, and that becomes the whole catalyst for the whole show, right?
So Allie's character is called Amy, so you got it right, Amy.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I couldn't think of which one, but like that sets it off, right? Like I think there was some moment of hesitance where, like, as he's backing up and she stops, and then honking starts getting involved, and she moves. The next thing you know, like they show her like thinking about it, and then she goes ahead and flicks him off, right? And that sets everything for the show. And then that just immediately, it's what got me hooked to the show, because how many times have you guys been driving down the road and you just get so angry? Like, not even anything crazy, but just even like someone cutting you off, someone like going or skipping the stop sign, or just running the stop sign a little bit further, or like past you a little bit, and you just either want to flick them off, or you want to get out of the car and beat them with the bat. But no, I'm just kidding.
Dude, I've been part where I've been the one that got somebody upset because I think I threw like a
Right?
lollipop at their car or something, and next thing you know, they're chasing me, and I'm driving in my 2005 Eclipse trying to like outrun them. But at the point it becomes this like, hey, first of all, like I'm never gonna lose this guy, so it's better for me to just kind of either slow down, maybe get the cops involved. But it's like, yeah, like I've been there, so I can definitely relate to somebody like you doing something to upset somebody.
Yeah,
So
and
I've been the one that's been chased, not the one that's chased somebody.
that's what I'm saying. So the very beginning, it hooked me in the idea that like, oh, this show's super relatable, right? Because like, who doesn't either want to do that or has had that? Like, I got inflicted off many times. Not saying that I'm a bad driver. Yeah, you, Raul. That's you. Okay, your fault.
No, I'm saying that like I haven't. Like I really don't get road rage. Like I get annoyed, but like I don't know, I'm not very ragey.
No, and I feel like I'm really patient with that kind of stuff. But you know what? That was perfect. That's why I wanted the show like to do what it did right away, because that's the scenario I would want to live out. Someone flicks me off, and I'm like, hell no, you did not just do that to me. And so then the next thing you know, Danny starts kind of following her, right? So then it becomes more of a little road rage like chase. They end up going over like a curb where like one of the residents of this house has planted like a nice little garden and like a nice little like curb display of flowers. And yeah, it just becomes this intense like heated road rage incident. You know, they're skipping cars, they're running red lights. It's like so crazy because
Throwing
it's a
stuff out the
normal thing.
window.
Yeah, throwing. Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, she threw like the shake or something, and she hits like the
Yeah,
windshield right away. Like
yeah.
everything that's just kind of worthy of you getting really, really pissed off at this person. And from
Mhm.
there, it starts, right? Because Danny, you know, obviously he ends up getting the plates, I believe, at that point. And then later on, he soon goes to like research that because in the back of his mind, he's just not satisfied with the fact that he didn't get his opportunity to tell this woman off because, you know, and again, the whole point of the show is like whose fault is it or who's the worst one. But right off the beginning, it's like, you know, he had no satisfaction, he had no closure, he got the plates, and I think that just started like the whole amount of craziness because right there the show became about people getting payback from other people. And I think the first thing Danny did was piss all over their bathroom. So I don't know if you guys want
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
pick up.
and he thought it was a guy too.
Oh
And
yeah, she thought it was George. Yeah.
he thought it was a guy, and then he like showed up. He saw that, and then when he pretended to be a contractor, he like just pissed all over the floor when he realized that like, oh, it was her.
I mean, like he was a contractor. I mean, and that was kind of like not so evident right away because I think they started announcing that like later in the episode. But that was just kind of funny, right? Like he had like the experience and he kind of used it to his advantage. He knew what to say to get into this person's house that clearly, you know, was already like maybe doubtful of a stranger coming up to the door, but he sounded so convincing that she did. So it was just kind of nice for him to get his first little payback going into the house. Like you said, he was expecting it to be like the husband, George, and it wasn't. But regardless, he freaking peed all over that bathroom.
But I mean, wasn't she vulnerable at that stage where he came knocking, or was that also when she was masturbating with the gun? I couldn't
So,
remember.
oh, you're right,
Oh
and
yeah.
perfect. The one of the many things that I definitely want to dive into, but no, yeah. So we had this little brief interaction before him pissing all over the place. Wait, before Steve. Oh my god, yeah, Danny's pissing all over the bathroom. Is that, you know, Amy gets home and she's angry, she's flustered from the whole incident. She wants to come home, and we all know this again. She wants to come home to basically to be able to vent, to be able to rage some more, to be able to have someone to back her up and to be like, yeah, fuck that guy, you know, like, you know, you're in the right, like, let's go beat his ass, let's go do whatever we need to do. And, you know, like, I think at one point she goes for the safe. I didn't know what the whole point of that was because at one point she's like, did you change the code to the safe, you know, to George? And George is like, yeah, but you know why. But I'm like over here, like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know why you changed the code to the safe. And yes, then you're right, Carlos. Like, let her go, and she bust out the gun eventually, right? I think it was like the pass code was like his mom's birthday, like something random like
Yeah.
that because he's a mama's boy. Takes out the gun, and what you thought was gonna be some crazy like, oh, like
Suicidal, yeah.
suicidal, or like maybe even just trying to be like threatening and playing with the mirror, like, you know, like those many scenes, like in
Or try to find him or something.
yeah, no, she straight up just starts, you know, getting really aroused by this gun, and probably another scene that escalated my interest into it. Not the masturbating part and getting aroused from it, but just
Yeah.
the fact that the show was depicting, you know, the whole idea of like something so deadly, so violent, and she's using it kind of more as a prop for her own satisfaction. And yeah, then Danny shows up.
No,
Well, you know, we talk a lot about we talked about dreams in our last episode that we did,
That you
and you
guys
know
don't
something.
have.
I know that was Raul. I have dreams. I have
Thank
definitely
you.
a lot of different dreams. Raul
I have no
doesn't.
hopes or dreams. No.
He has an empty void in his head, which is a little alarming because he also has a gun, and I don't know what he's doing with that gun at home. But no, you know, for me, I
Yes.
have this. I have this recurring dream, and it's always about a witch, man. I have this recurring dream that gives me nightmares where, and it doesn't happen very often. Maybe once every year, or maybe every often, I get a dream about like a witch, and it scares the fuck out of me. So you know, not to get too a little bit much ahead, and I'm only gonna tie it to like her masturbating because you know, like you kind of like I don't know if that was ever explained, but later, definitely later towards like episode 8 or 9, you get a little bit sense that she's she's a little bit of a freak. She does all these kind of like weird sexual things, and I don't know, understand that I ever really understood why she has this way that she is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it if at the end of the day that's what she gets off on. But you also have these things where I think maybe her dad had an affair, so she starts seeing like this witch person, and dude, I was not ready for that in that show. And
Yeah.
anytime
Threw me
that
off.
fucking every time that witch is like, oh my god, like I don't need anything to. I hate things that remind me of witches because then I possibly could end up having that recurring dream. So anytime that fucking witch episode showed up, like I was fucking like sweating, hated it, even though it was more about like dealing why she was possibly the way she was, because it seems like maybe her dad did have an affair and she did come from like a broken family. Because that was also something very, very interesting, because again, that kind of ties with the whole her masturbating with the gun.
Yeah, I mean, and that's go ahead.
Everything with that witch kind of gave me like the Babadook vibes a little bit, where there was just like this presence that kind of like brought shame or fear or whatever,
And
kind of like
anytime
into her.
anytime anybody's afraid of the Babadook, and if you don't know what we're talking about, look him up. But the Babadook,
Amazing movie.
just remember that he's a gay icon, so that right away should
Really?
take the fear. Yeah, yeah, look it up. He's a gay icon, so definitely the Babadook doesn't scare me. But this witch lady definitely 100% scared the fuck out of me. So I'm like, get it out of my screen, please.
No, I mean, and since you went there, like, absolutely, that episode was definitely kind of like threw me off because, I mean, while I talked about it, there was a couple other instances that felt kind of supernatural or weird or different. That was definitely an episode where I'm like, wait, why are we like seeing a witch all of a sudden, right? And it was just like kind of really random because so far the show,
I'm sweating talking about it. Let's stop talking about it.
Carlos, just don't turn around, man. Just don't turn around. Promise you, don't turn around. But no, like, yeah, I think I was really thrown off by that too because I did not expect the witch to kind of show up, and I didn't know what it really was. And obviously we're jumping a little bit, but we'll soon find out. And we already kind of mentioned that the show becomes a little bit of you trying to analyze like who's the worst person, I guess. And I believe there's a competition, but because it is beef between them, and we are talking about two people who have beef together, it is kind of like who's in the right, who's in the wrong. And I think that episode, obviously, it was great. I thought it was like the witch was a creative way of explaining like what really was torturing her mind, right? Amy wasn't a great person. She wasn't as great person as we thought she was. And The Witch was definitely a good reminder of that, right? Like through her growing up and just based off of one book that she read, she got it in her head that if she doesn't behave, then the witch is going to come get her. So
that was a creepy ass book too.
Oh yeah, I mean, who lets their kids read that stuff? Like, come on, man.
No, but you know what? Like, it doesn't surprise me because, like, in a lot of immigrant cultures, like they scare you.
Oh yeah,
so you behave like
La Llorona,
or the Boogeyman.
La Llorona.
La Llorona. Like growing up, I saw scary movies. Like I saw Poltergeist and the Freddy Krueger ones, Jason, all those. Like when I was a kid. So
guys, I didn't know this was I didn't know this was into a scary episode because I'm already sweating and I'm already getting nervous. So we need to go back to the depression and talking about how shitty these people are because.
And I will say for the record, please don't masturbate or do anything with a loaded weapon. Please do not. Just so it's out there.
Raul's a military man. Listen to Raul. He knows his stuff. He's experienced it.
Pro gun safety.
There you go. But no, I mean, so yeah, I guess so. Like we don't make it like one sided, and then we can obviously get deeper into why she's like not a great person. But so then, like even in retrospect, like when we start finding out about Danny, right? Like Danny's someone similar. So Amy is the lady who kind of has it all, like so far, right? She has like a kind of rich husband that comes from money because his dad was a famous artist. Definitely thinks he's an artist, quote unquote, if you don't see me. We'll get into that in a little bit. Has a little daughter, has a really blooming business that in the show, they're in midst of closing a deal so that the hardware store that they were in originally picks up the deal and carries their product, which is basically like just kind of crappy, like, or not crappy, but like elevated pots with plants in them, nothing too bougie, quote unquote. It's straight up just something that she kind of made up. And she later confessed it in the last episode that she just Googled stuff and then she makes it that way. But anyway, so she's supposedly the person that kind of has that ideal life. She obviously has a little bit more money. And later we find out she's kind of a little bit of a bad person, or at least has a shitty like upbringing. And then with Danny, it was kind of the opposite because in a sense, I kind of relate to him more, and I can say I have a good life, but I definitely am not kidding myself about my life. There's nothing I'm hiding. It's nothing that it's like an impending like unhappiness. But I relate with him because he was trying to please his parents in a sense, right? At this point, we find out that because of his cousin, his parents lost the motel business that they had, and so they had to go back to Korea. So when you meet in him, Danny's basically had been working so much as a contractor, as a trade of all jack or jack of all trades, just basically doing what he can to make any type of money so he can
But
build a house for the parents.
but don't forget that he's terrible at it. Like honestly, this
Uh,
man should not be doing or be a jack of all trades because from what I've seen,
The handing
even
machine.
even the setting the ring alarm. Now that I was thinking about that, we're talking about it. I'm like, you know what? He should not have been able to hear them talk within the ring alarm. So that tells me that maybe he even did the setup incorrect for that because maybe that's the reason why he could hear the conversation. So like Danny, to me overall, just seemed like a guy that honestly, he would have
he
been better
tried.
joining. I think he would have actually like I don't say this often, but if he had joined the army, I think that would have brought a lot of things to his life, like discipline, and I think it would have gotten him more on point with what he could have done with his life. But to me, yeah, like that guy seems like he's lost, and he tried to be a contractor just because maybe he thought it would be a good way of making a quick buck or making something out of himself. But again, I try to encourage people, and I don't know how long he had been doing it, but it seemed like for a long, long time. But it doesn't seem like he was very good at it, especially when you look at his reviews.
No, and I mean, I think that's part of the thing. It's like he has the effort, right? And I think that's what really makes him commendable is that you see him as a person that's trying. He's trying. He doesn't have the money. He simply wants to get his parents back, right? He has like kind of Gen Z like brother or whatever he is, and not a diss on that generation, but it's just more so the brother was just not really motivated. Like he thought making crypto money was going to be the solution for him getting rich, like he would do it overnight. And here's Danny busted, like you said, Carlos, not great at everything, but he's putting in the work, right? Like he's putting in the work, he's trying. And then I think what was sad with him is that he simply wasn't happy that he just couldn't do it. Like you said, perhaps maybe it was the fact that he sucked at it. Perhaps maybe it was the fact that he just simply wasn't being successful in what he wanted to do. That he ultimately, you go back and you realize that that first scene of him trying to return the hibachi girls is actually he had bought those girls to commit suicide. And I think that was the moment that I really realized that the show was like beyond freaking depressing. And it just kind of set it to a whole new expectation. But I mean, they're both really depressed, right? Like one's just really unhappy with like kind of the not fake life, but somewhat illusion of a happiness, like happy life that she has. And then Kim is just trying to put in the effort to do that. And you said that whole thing about the bad reviews. I think that's one of the very next things that Amy did to kind of get back to him. Like right after he pisses all over her bathroom, she starts going in, finds his business, and starts giving him like bad reviews, which, it kind of sucks if you are in a business, right? Because we know it.
I think she was telling the truth by saying that this man came to her house and pissed all over the bathroom. Which I would write that if a contractor did that for my after he finished his job.
No, yeah, and the big thing too that I liked what they did specifically with Amy and Danny is that it's like the same person but differently done. So
Hmm.
you have Danny who like kind of like you said, he puts in the work, but he doesn't really take responsibility for any of the bad stuff that happens. And then he
Exactly.
always deflects responsibility, and he kind of like blames the system or blames rich people, blames his parents, blames his cousin, blames his brother, and all this stuff. And then you have Amy where she like has everything where she should be happy, but she has like all these like parental issues. She internalizes everything she can't. She always has like this facade of like she always pretending to be happy and kind of honestly they're both kind of constantly pretending. Like she's pretending that she's satisfied with life and everything's like all perfect, and he's pretending that he knows what he's doing, and he's kind of like in a way conning people into everything. Kind of like he conned the people into like cutting the trees, and then like the church and obviously and all that stuff, and then she's kind of like conning in her whole business and conning kind of like society because she has to maintain this image so that everything stays like honky dory or whatever.
Yeah,
No,
man.
So it was interesting.
yeah, no, Ro, everything you said is actually how I feel about everybody in the, those two characters specifically. So I'm glad you like broke it down that specifically because I think at the end of the day, I mean, there's more than two characters in this show. There's, a large cast, But I want to say the one thing that I feel like consistent is that every character, whether they were small or big, they all fucking like they suck, man. None of these people,
Yeah,
none of none of
except
these
the
people,
girl.
except maybe like the little girl, like none of these people like are like you want to root for them. Like Danny fucking sucks. Ali sucks for the reasons you mentioned. But then there's
George,
also like the young George
George
fucking
sucks.
sucks as he's over here having emotional relationships with
we got to talk
Amy's
about
like
George. Yeah,
yeah, no, and like even the brother. At first, when we got introduced to him, I thought maybe he was like underage because I'm like, why else would he
Yeah,
be able to have such control over like, hey, give me your passwords, and all of a sudden I'm taking control over your crypto keys, and like, but later on you just find out that like, no, he's probably like a 29, 28 years old. It's probably been like 10 years since he graduated high school, and that's what the time frame I kind of got from it. Um,
no, I think he's more like 20, like early
five,
mid
20s, like
20s,
like
mid 20s. Yeah.
21, maybe 22.
yeah, but even he kind of sucks, man. Because I understand like
Yeah.
later on, there's the reveal that like, oh, Danny kind of like fucked him over by not
Oh,
having his admission letters be submitted. But I'm like, even if you never get an answer from the school, that's like no reason for you to like all of a sudden like give up or like not even pick up the phone and be like, hey, I never got a response. And to me, it just tells me that even if that character would have gone to a school, like he more than likely would have either have partied his ass off, would have like met some chick, would have done something like stupid. He probably would have been
Or
one of those
dropped
people that
out or something.
yeah, like he would have dropped out and probably did
It was
start like
too hard.
yeah, like do a crypto business or something. So like that to me didn't seem like an excuse for him to all of a sudden be like, oh well, my life sucks because my brother screwed me over. Like nah, dude. Like at the end of the day, you gotta pick your ass up and do something. And again, George, you kind of like nailed it,
oh
Ramon.
my
Like he kind of
goodness,
like
freaking George.
sucks. And then his mom fucking sucks. Like everyone in this fucking show sucks, man. And like that's not saying that like to me that's what makes the show interesting because like
Absolutely.
obviously you want to follow people that I watch Better Call Saul and I watch like all 15 episodes in 2 days of the new season. It's like, oh, I'm not
I've
rooting
seen
for
that, yeah.
Saul. Like in reality, he's like a piece of shit character too. But it's like it makes it enjoyable for you to watch these
Oh
characters that do
yeah.
terrible things because you're just sort of screaming at the TV like, don't do that. Like, why are you doing that? Like, stop it. Like, don't do it. Like, turn around. Like, change your life around. Like, this doesn't have to go this way. Like, and it's fucking crazy. And I think that's what makes the show kind of exciting to
Yeah,
watch.
man, it's all difficult to like. I wanted to mention Ozark, but I don't want to talk about Ozark. Ozark was the same way too. You freaking hated the birds, but at the same time, you're like, there's a part of you that roots for them. But dude, let's talk about Paul sucked for many reasons, and I think just his lack of motivation and just like kind of fake,
Ah,
like I'm gonna do this, whatever. We'll get back to Paul minimally, but George, man, oh my god, I hate George, and I think everybody that I talked to
as an
about this said,
artist
no, okay,
or
okay,
in
wait, no,
general?
no, you're getting to where I'm saying exactly. Well, not just exactly, but so first of all, like we're doing this episode also because we do have people that wanted to hear about this, and I think that the consensus with everybody that talks to me about the show and we talk is that we all hate George for the same reasons. Again, mama's boy, right? Like super mama's boy, like freaking safe code is mama's birthday. His dad used to be a famous artist, which he has that recognition, he has the money from that. But then, like, even when you get introduced to that chair, that's like an art piece first before furniture, right? And you find out that the story is more like, oh, the dad modeled it using his mom's naked body, like her sitting on the chair. And so not only does he have an attachment to this chair because of his dad, but also because of his mom later literally sat on it naked. And so he can't get
Oedipus
rid of it.
complex.
Yeah, it's exactly. So it's like this weird, like grown ass baby who has money. And then yes, the worst part of it all is that he thinks he's a great artist. And again, not dissing artists because I'm myself an artist, and there is something to say commendable when you are doing what you can, when you're making artwork, when you're being productive, when you're doing, that's great. But the fact that he just kind of took, I guess, his dad's stature to make him be more recognizable. And I know he had some shows and all this stuff. It's kind of like where the cheap shot came in. And I think the best, most satisfying part in regards to George for me is when his mom said he wasn't even a good artist. Like his mom
Ah,
admitted it. His mom admitted that he wasn't a good artist. And even in the very final episode, like Danny and Amy are talking, and Amy says she's never liked this work, or he doesn't like the work. And it's just, there's something so satisfying to me about that, because like he made things so much worse. And yeah, Carlos, like you mentioned that about him and the coworker of Amy, but that's not even the beginning of why he's so
Yeah.
bad.
what's her name? Maya or what was it?
That was that everyone? No, Mia.
Yeah.
Mia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think with him as like an artist, I honestly feel like it's one of those things where like you wouldn't want to buy the art, not necessarily because I could tell you like, oh, that art sucks or that art's not good. It's because when you meet the man behind the art, he's just doesn't have any charisma, doesn't have
Exactly.
anything
Exactly.
interest, it doesn't have anything interesting about him, doesn't have like a story to tell. All he The only reason that we truly know he wants to be an artist because his dad was an artist, but that alone, so many people in Hollywood would tell you it's not enough for you to make a career out of. So it kind of sucks. It's like, this is a very handsome, tall, strong man that you feel like, man, like this dude could totally kick Stanley's ass if you ever really wanted to
Oh
step
yeah.
up. And you can tell Amy wants that from him, like, hey, step up, protect the family, be more of a man, choke me, do all these things, slap me. And it's like, especially how we like
Be
realize
less
what kind.
vanilla.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, be less vanilla. Yeah. Especially when you find out about her, it's like, yeah, like why show me the story of how these two got together? Because that also kind of seems like maybe she conned herself into like this marriage with this man for the money, and that's probably like the only reason why she's even married to him. Because I mean, this is clearly like, to me, it always headed towards a divorce, whether it was going to happen now or 5 years later. But it's couple is not really in my eyes meant to last.
No, yeah, with that marriage, I kind of saw that as like she probably convinced herself that that's what she should do, so that's why she did it. And then it kind of started like as part of her like facade of like this is who I'm supposed to be, this is what I'm supposed to show people, and this is the type of guy I'm supposed to marry or whatever. And then she did, and then like that's why she's always pretending, and like his whole like how like passive he is, and the whole fact that he's like all like meditation and all these like weird things and not nothing against it, but like everything all combined like gives me this image of him that like I just want to punch him in the face all the
No,
time.
exactly. See, I mean, absolutely. I think again, and especially me, not dissing artists, not dissing like anyone who's kind of like in that any of the realm of the things he does, right? Because he's also a cyclist. Like he was doing so much. He's like in art shows. He's a great dad because he obviously takes care of Junie the most. But I think at the end of the day is that it's just a combination of everything. Just kind of really plays him really dirty to us, and then again, that's okay because I mean, you mentioned the whole fact that she does call him vanilla because that is true. Like, and that was when he was questioning her about her obsession with the gun. That she's like, well, maybe if you were less vanilla, and he doesn't even understand that concept because he's so mellow and so
Yeah.
dry. And
He's
just
all
the fact that he had
vanilla, yeah.
the fact that he had that romantic, like platonic affair type of thing, I think was then funny because at the end of the day, even he's not satisfied with himself or even with that relationship because kind of Amy's lying to herself way too much that even he has to go reach out of that relationship and look into someone younger, like more ideal in a sense, and that's funny too because that backfires like crazy and causes more chaos.
Yeah. No, and you know what? I just think it's like kind of interesting because, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you could say George has like a mama problem and a dad problem, but I feel like most men, women will always say that about them, like, oh, you're too attached to your mom, or, you'll never be like your dad. Me and you, Ramon, for example, we have parents that, based on what I saw when we were growing up, like these men could do anything. My dad was the kind of man that could build a basement, could build a patio, could fix a car, and I don't have any of that skills. So, he's that. Yeah, I don't, man. I do a lot of home projects. I do a lot of construction, the things that I'm capable of doing, but I'll never be my dad. And it's one of those things like I might not be trying to aim to be my dad because I don't want to work at a factory 40 hours a week. I definitely didn't set that as my expectations. But at the end of the day, even though I feel like I'm doing something that I want to do with my career, that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, I'm not thinking like, oh, like if I was this kind of person, maybe my dad would be more proud of me. But it just kind of sucks, man. It's something that we all feel like we have to overcome. And just say like, hey, we're our own individual persons, and we just have to deal with our own emotions and try to be somebody different than because we'll never be our parents, and we really gotta like work as an individual to like step out of that shadow.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things too. It's like, and again, it sounds like bad because we're crapping on George for those kind of characteristics and things, but it's like, I think in reality, where it did kind of make it worse for himself in the show is that there is a point where yes, like Amy wanted to be in that perfect relationship, whether she was kidding herself or not, and he just wasn't doing it for her. And it was because of his attachment and the things holding him back. And it was just dependency, right? Like, yes, you're right. We're never gonna, like, especially if you do think in that mind. And so many other shows, anime, movies bring this whole topic of like trying to please your dad in that way of like trying to be like him, or you don't have a dad and so you're trying to make up for it. Those topics are so huge, but in this show, it's funny because it made him look so bad and it made him like a man baby. And, for what it was great. Like, I really enjoy that factor of it, especially the chair. I think the chair is one of the most impactful things because
Mhm.
even at the end, right, like the chair was so significant to help them be better off, right? If he would have sold the chair from the beginning, like Amy would have been able to sell her brand to I forget the name, Jordan, to the lady who was in the CEO of the other
Ah,
company.
she
Yeah,
has
and
money
so
too.
yeah, oh yeah, so and so yeah, but by the time
Yeah.
he finally gets rid of that chair, it changes her life, right? Then they have a vacation home, they have a nanny, they have everything. So the fact that he was holding onto that chair just because of sentimental value, because it was I guess not. Again, I'm downplaying it, but at the same time, if he knew it was gonna help his immediate family, his wife and the daughter, do it, man. Like, be a freaking man. Like, be a husband and a father.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If, again, Jordan, another character that fucking sucks. But I think, before we just start saying like how much all these people suck and this person was terrible, I think maybe we should talk about the one person who was the true hero of this show and the one that definitely should have gone. His story should have gone a lot different. And of course, I'm talking about his cousin.
Oh,
This is
Isaac.
Isaac. I
Isaac.
definitely feel like, had Danny been following as Isaac instructions from everything that he was saying, they could have definitely had a very successful construction career, and they could have all been very, very rich. But Danny being Danny, he just kind of wanted to get one up on him, because maybe it was jealousy, maybe it was the fact that he was getting payback for losing the hotel for his parents. I don't know what the reasoning was behind it, but I definitely feel like he kind of got freaking screwed by this family member, especially when he
Oh
felt
my
that
goodness.
family could not betray him and family was the only thing that he could trust. And he was always like, hey, Danny, you need 20 grand. Here's 20 grand, Danny. I'll give them to you. I'll let you borrow them. Like, don't worry about paying me back. And again, I'm kidding about being the hero because he's clearly doing things that are very
Oh my goodness.
questionable. But at least at the end of the day, he knew who he was. He had a plan, whether it was like being a good person or a bad person. Clearly it was more of being a bad person. But he was somebody that didn't doubt himself. He had confidence. He knew he could build himself from the bottom up no matter what. So it kind of like sucks that like Danny was the reasoning why he kind of like went down the spiral. And I think he didn't die but got arrested at the end of the
Yeah,
episode,
he
the
got
show, right?
arrested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it kind of fucking sucks, man, because I feel like he totally got fucked more than he fucked over Danny's parents. He got fucked over by Danny.
See, and that's where I was trying to like justify that, because I think from the beginning I was like, man, no, like totally screwed up his parents, and that should be enough because they lost their whole business, right? Like,
Yeah.
it seems like that hotel, whatever it was from the beginning, like that was like their childhood. That's kind of how they grew up, and at least that was a big significant part of like them being Korean Americans, and it was a business, like it's something that they were doing well, and then his like Isaac's crappy ways is what ruined it. So by the end of the show, I think he got what's coming. It's not only that, but he's gonna
Yeah.
die because remember he said, if I
Yeah.
go back, the Filipinos are gonna get me. Those Filipinos, man, watch out. I'm just
Uh,
kidding.
could you remind people what he did to
My wife
lose?
is half Filipino.
What did he lose for? Okay, that makes it okay. What what was the reason and why they lost the hotel? Like, what? How exactly did he screw them over?
So Isaac was, I think he was like holding stolen stuff, or he was
Okay.
selling like,
At storage, in storage, yeah.
yeah, like, but it was illegal, and then kind of like the place got raided, and then I'm guessing that affected people staying there,
You, you,
and then probably caused them to have to like sell the motel.
Danny's parents were also fucking terrible people. So if that
Yeah.
plane goes down on their way back to their home country, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I mean, unless there's probably more passengers. I shouldn't say that. If they were the only passengers and the pilots were able to jump out with parachutes, and Danny's parents were the only ones that died, I would be okay with it.
Man,
Because,
who knew a show named Beef would make you hate so many people?
I
but
Dude, I swear, like
well,
every single person, like every single
well,
character is like. a
Well,
crappy, horrible character.
well, dude, the idea that like your son built a house, you come here, the house burns down, and your
Oh
immediate
my
thought is
god.
like, send me back home. That's why I say like, if they
Yeah.
die, they die because they're just fucking terrible. But I also feel like, it was probably one of those things where Isaac, I bet you they were paying the parents. He was like, because he seems like the kind of guy that's like, oh, you do this for me, like here's $100, here's $1,000. So I bet you at the end of the day, even though they lost the hotel, I wouldn't be surprised if they were getting some money from Isaac for doing these like storage situations with them. So to put the blame on Isaac for something that the parents were probably aware of or were taking money, even though the show probably doesn't get into it. I also feel like, again, like it's not Isaac's fault if he tells you like, hey, I'm gonna do this and pay you for it and you accept it. At the end of the day, we should all be responsible for what we choose to do. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's crazy, and just kind of throw Isaac into another scenario and kind of just
Because
kind of
Ramon, we're family, and if you tell me like, hey, I'll pay you 1,000 to store my illegal so and so in my basement, like I'm gonna tell you to get the fuck out of my house with my shotgun that I don't have. So
I was about to think you were gonna tell me you would let me do it. I'm like, okay, this is proof. I'll show up tomorrow. Just accept my delivery.
Don't worry, Ramon. I got you.
There you go.
oh my
See,
god,
we already know Raul has a big yard. We could just bury stuff,
oh my
storage for a little
god.
while. No one look into this. There's nothing being buried in Raul's backyard, by the way. No,
No,
but like,
no, nor in my garden.
yeah. No, I mean, I guess before we even continue with trash talking all the other surrounding characters, I mean, going back to just like Danny and Amy, like another thing too, another ways that I was kind of relating to Danny, and again, I don't mean to make myself and just in general make depression the big topic because there were so many other topics in the show that were great, but like even little things like when you found out that Danny was driving like almost an hour away, and again, you kind of knew that eventually was because he was looking for a house for the parents, but that he was driving an hour away to a Burger King that he thought was the best Burger King around. And then he would eat 4 classic chicken sandwiches with fries and a soda. And if that's not depression for anyone, like if that's not depression, like come on, dude, that's depression. Like the fact, if you guys have never had like a classic chicken sandwich, they're long. They're like probably the
Yeah.
hand size of a hand palm.
They
But
were
no, that
pretty
was like
good though.
yeah, one is pretty good, maybe two
One.
max.
No,
Or the way that I used to
one.
do it, and then load the fries on top of it, and then maybe a little bit of barbecue sauce.
Ramon, you know what I like to do when I go to a restaurant and I really, really like their food? I like to leave them a review and give them 5 stars to let them know that this restaurant is really good, the service is great, and you should definitely go and eat at the restaurant. So, if you guys are enjoying this podcast, make sure that also like you would a restaurant, you give us a 5-star review because it just takes one simple press for you to do it. And if you could follow us, that would be amazing. But again, I'm hoping that most of you listening are already doing that. So thank you, appreciate it. Ramon, continue to your advertisement for Burger King.
I mean, hey, and if you guys do that and you actually message us somewheres, maybe I'll try to eat 4 freaking classic chicken sandwiches on the next one. I don't know. We'll see.
Done.
Posted on social
Done.
media.
Oh, come on. Hey, no fake accounts, though. No fake accounts, all right? But yes, I can step up to the challenge, right? Not the built up depression and other anxiety in life, but I can do it.
I just told you a couple of minutes ago that I've been eating like multiple donuts in the morning for the past like 2 weeks.
See, I mean, but that's exactly again, that's where the show really grabs you because there's these things of being able to relate. Like whether you're depressed or unhappy, like maybe it's not even that. Maybe it's just the one thing that just really does it for you after a hard freaking day at work, or a hard day at school, whatever you do. Like there's some things that we just clearly need that in this situation for Danny and Amy was just having the beef with someone, having that conflict. Like you even saw and again, going back to that first scene after they finally kind of have that final interaction, she smirks at the end because she's like, oh, it's on. Like, anything that gives someone life's purpose, even if it's donuts. Hey,
wait, did the show not end with Danny getting shot and kind of the screen going black, or did you watch something
no.
that I didn't watch?
No, I was talking about in the end of the first episode.
Okay,
but also no, that's not how the show ended, and we'll kind of get to there in a little bit. Yeah, that's not how it ended either. But I mean, so a couple other things that I wanted to bring up because it would be kind of sad if we don't bring it up, but other crazy parts in general about the show, like, oh yeah, when you found out the house was kind of burnt down and it was all Danny's fault because being the shitty contractor that he is and used the wrong wiring, that was a big Gatsby moment for me. I think that was one of those moments where I'm like, oh man, dude, if you would have just done your job and you would have been better at your job, that would have been so good. I know there's one.
especially
Yeah.
because he blames the guy from the church. So,
Oh,
it's like this one guy that was like, "You're doing something illegal." Like, I just know it, and kind of like the whole thing kind of sucks. Gets like
because he was though.
first of all, that priest probably sucks to begin with because the whole reason, like, he was very very jealous of Danny, and his wife would constantly be like, she was probably talking a lot about Danny after Danny left the room, and he overheard saying like, "Danny was the best I ever had." He was just so big, uh, and who that would for sure make me like upset if I was that guy. But it was just kind of funny how he would go begging at Danny and be like, "Hey, I don't know what you're doing, but I want to be part of it because clearly you're doing something wrong." And you could totally tell that he was trying to like find out just to like snitch on him. He wasn't even probably being serious about doing the job. He just wanted to kind of have something against Danny to prove like, hey, this guy's
Oh,
been lying to you
absolutely.
guys and conning you.
Yeah.
So again, somebody else that sucks in the show.
Oh yeah, and you brought up a kind of a good point in the show because that was kind of a little bit after like the time lapse. There was a little bit of a time lapse, right? We see Danny; he's kind of been somewhat reborn because now he's like a member of this church. Like he's doing things for the church. He's like the lead kind of singer in the church band, so he has like a new purpose. And then Amy, Amy got a haircut. And
She's
yeah,
blonde. Yeah.
but there was more. Yeah, after that, like they already sold the chair at that point, so that they had that extra money. They had like the vacation home, so they had there was this illusion for like a second that they had forgotten about this beef, that they had totally just not even not thought about each other for a while, and it was unrealistic. It soon bounced back like so quick. That scene with the mom, with George's mom, when Danny told the cousins like little posse, like his little friends, to go rob the house because of the artwork that he had that was valuable. Remember, I thought that was really cool because that's the moment that at this point, Amy, to try to get back to Danny, basically starts texting or ends up texting the brother, right? It was more of like
Yeah,
trying to
Paul.
catfish. It was trying to catfish Danny, but through it, like Paul got involved and he shows him a picture of her, like him shirtless and stuff, and I mean, kind of plays along with it. She kind of uses the picture of her worker to
Yeah.
basically to cat. You remember that girl very well. No, but yeah, to catfish him, and the next thing you know, that became a whole other thing because that moment that they had an affair, that was kind of like what she's been wanting, right? She's been someone exciting, someone who's like going to be a little bit more like straightforward, a little bit more aggressive, and you later found out that he even choked her a little bit, and she kind of really liked that, and all these things, and then ultimately, again, Paul in that whole situation, it's led to the craziness of like the people trying to come into the house, trying to like kind of rob him. And the mom was there the whole time. So she witnessed that whole crazy affair while it was going on. And then
Yeah.
ultimately she kind of like accidentally fell and got hurt. And then,
So
so a lot of good
so
points in this movie.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, so for anybody listening that's like in a relationship or it's married, at any point you find yourself in a hotel and somebody that you've been messaging knocks at that door and you invite him in and you have to tell them like, "Hey, we're not gonna be physical." The moment that person enters the room, you're already cheating. Like I don't care what happens, whether there was any interaction, any touching, you're having either an emotional or a physical cheating at that point. So definitely don't do it. So again, if you find yourself in a hotel, do not have somebody that's 10 years younger than you or 10 years older come into it because, just say no. I'm happily married or in a happy relationship. And if you don't feel like you're in a happy relationship or a happy marriage, definitely end it before it gets to that point because definitely what she does is totally like fucked up, man. Like totally like.
but But that's her. I mean, that's how you know that she's not like the best person in the world. And I think again, couldn't believe that, right? Like I kept on thinking maybe I did fall for the show's premise of like obviously you found out more and more that she wasn't great, but that was another thing that I'm like, dude, she totally slept with freaking Paul and not only
Yeah.
cheated, but like that kid was a kid, like to her.
No, and I think definitely, I mean, the one thing that you've been kind of hammering, Ramon, is that these two individuals, they sort of need at this point in time, especially in the beginning, they needed each other's beef with one another. Danny, because Danny's a little bit suicidal, and sort of this beef motivation with Ali kind of casts him, motivates him to like continue to move forward, continue to terrorize this lady, continue to like try to get back at her. that kind of gets him to forget about like how shitty his life is, or things aren't really going his way. Same thing with Ellie. This whole distraction with Ellie is kind of helping her with her stress about like selling the business, and the fact that they still want to keep her on for 2 more years, and the fact that she's saying like, I don't want to do that, even though she really, really wants to do it, because at the end of the day, she'd rather be at work than spend any like time with George at home. So these characters again, they need each other. The part that I don't understand is how obsessed Danny gets at the end of the show once he does find out that he's the reason why the house burned down. That he feels like he needs to still continue to terrorize Allie, because I'm like, dude, at this point, like, it was your fault, like she had nothing to do with it, but you're still gonna find that you're gonna go to her house and try to steal something or like fuck her over one last moment. I just like, dude, at this point, like, Danny, go fuck yourself, dude. Like, seriously, like, leave her alone.
Dude, and you kind of said it too, and to kind of add and to kind of explain why he did that. So like for Danny, Amy is Amy gives him something or someone to blame for everything that's going badly for him,
Oh, God.
because he like work's not going well, the house, his goals, everything with his brother, like the family and everything, and Amy gives him something to like, oh, it's her fault, she's the reason why this isn't working, she's this or whatever. And with Amy, what he affords her is he affords her like the chance to like release everything that she's repressing, because she's kind of had that facade or whatever. So like when he kind of when the house does burn down, he just kind of reverts back to like, well, I've been blaming her for all this stuff, so I'm going to just blame her again, because Paul mentioned that he just went to her house or whatever, so he thought that like, oh, it might be her or whatever, until he saw the other dude that drove away. But I don't know. That's kind of what they did for each other. But like they're the same person. Like
Yeah.
they're the exact same crabby person that I don't know, caused all that shit for themselves.
No, and like something with me, like I kind of mentioned, like I forget how the show ended, and just like they were sort of hallucinating, and because I think they ate stuff from the desert that they didn't know what they were
The
eating, because
berries.
they
Yeah.
were idiots. For anybody that doesn't know, I think I just had surgery not too long ago, and I think I watched the final episode the day after my surgery, and I
Penis
think I was,
surgery.
huh?
Penis surgery.
No, I did not have penis surgery, Raul.
What is that
I don't.
even?
Oh my god. Okay, I'll edit that out. Nobody needs to know about my humongous penis, bro. Okay, but
Now.
oh my. But similar to Danny and Amy, I was also taking some very strong drugs. So I think when I was watching that final episode, I was also hallucinating from some of the drugs that I was taking, Ramon. So could you tell me exactly how the show sort of ended or wrapped up at the end of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very well, I mean, again, you want me to talk about the last episode, but that was like something very brief, right? Because you mentioned about after the house, all that stuff that happened led to some of the craziest scenes. Because Amy is with the one lady who's gonna,
Jordan.
Jordan, who's gonna supposedly acquire the company, and then at that point is where it goes even crazier, right? Like the cousin Isaac comes with the other dudes. They're gonna rob the place. Freaking Jordan gets dismembered. She gets freaking the shooting. I think that the moment where like I dropped my jaw and I couldn't close it is when freaking she closed that door, the panic room door on her.
What's her name? Name the
Naomi,
actress. Oh,
Naomi. Oh, the actress. What?
yeah,
Who?
because she's also the actress from Emily in Paris.
Oh
Is that
yeah,
what?
Naomi. Yeah, that's Ashley Park. Naomi. Yeah, and then that point, like she didn't do it on purpose, but it was definitely one of those things where like she was panicking as she was in the panic room, and they wanted him to get there. That was the one scene that left me with my jaw open. I couldn't close it for a little bit. Not that the show hadn't been crazy so far, but that was just like I didn't expect that
I
whatsoever.
know.
Yeah, and another part in this episode that was really significant, that really matters to the last one, is also there's that really, really important scene where Paul and Danny are trying to escape, right? Paul, being the young, athletic dude that he is, freaking climbs this wall. Well, obviously he had Danny's help, but he gets to the top of this wall and then basically like can't really get Danny to get up there. Danny can't jump high enough, like got no skills, even though he's good at basketball apparently, but he can't jump that high. I don't know. Anyway, so in order to convince Paul to kind of just go by himself, that's when he does confess about like the college letters applications that he never sent out. He admits to the house burning down being his fault. So he really basically pisses off Paul enough to get him to go away. And I love that scene too, because Paul makes it over the wall and all you hear is like, hey, you there, stop. And then you hear shooting. And so us as the viewer had no freaking clue if Paul got shot or not. Right. And so now going into the last episode, you're coming off of this episode that you're like, holy crap, you know, people got dismembered, like people got shot, like the one dude died, you know, Isaac got taken to jail, freaking, you know, George ran
Jordan
off with the
died.
George ran off with the daughter too, like all these
Oh
things
yeah,
happen. And then I think one of the most things that were prevalent in Danny's mind is the fact that he didn't even know if Paul was still alive, right? And I think that's the thing that really led into this last show being so significant. Like you get towards the end, you get to that last episode, you know, they basically, Amy sees him leaving the house, and they chase each other off a cliff in the cars. And then it sets this whole like chase sequence where, you know, she's kind of chasing after him with a gun, trying to make him stop. There's even a beautiful scene with the crows. I don't know how much you guys
yeah,
appreciated the scene with the crows,
yeah.
right? The crows basically know who
They're
they
talking.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the one crow is like, hey, these guys are crazy. What is that? Little kitty cat? Okay, Carlos.
No, so I think you're seeing kitty cats now, Ramon. But stop teasing me. What happened at the end of the episode? Did he survive? Did he not?
Well,
So they
all
start.
of this is important for it, so that's why
It's really
he's building
the
it up.
last
Yeah,
episode was the best episode in my opinion, right? They had this whole chase
yeah,
sequence. The crows even have a say of what's gonna be their fate, being like the freaking carriers of souls. They even intervene and they cause Amy to mess up and not shoot him, which was great. They end up getting like, they lose themselves. Eventually, like she even kind of still stumbles upon him like shitting in the freaking middle of the desert. All these great things. Ultimately, they end up together. Still, she's trying to still threaten him. They do. She kind of tells him to go find them elderberries, which, you know, her knowing the botanist that she thinks she is, you know, has no clue what these are. He does get those berries. They start hallucinating their minds off, and I think that was by far the best scene, right? In their hallucination, they get to really break down really the whole journey that they've been through the whole show. They get to really kind of reflect on what they've been up to, their lives, what significant moments in their lives has led them to be so fucked up or so desperate or so depressed. He tells her about like almost trying to commit suicide. They basically speak about how life hates them so much that this is the reason why they're not letting, like, life is not letting them go, because they're so bad. And they're just a beautiful moment. My favorite part of that show, they even cross kind of brain slash hallucinate. Like they have a Freaky Friday type of like experience where all of a sudden Amy, because again, they're tripping balls, right? Amy's like, wait, is this me or is this you? And he's like, I don't know, it's me, it's you. And the whole like 5 minutes gets played out where they're talking as each other. And to me,
yeah,
that was just beautiful because it is
yeah,
this, you know, it's that reflection that they basically bonded over hallucinogens and some crazy ass berries over their shitty lives, the reasons why they are shitty, the reasons why they're depressed, the reasons why no one else in their life has been good enough to satisfy them. But this crazy beef that they had was the thing they needed. So at the very end of the show, they finally make it out, right? Like Danny has to carry her a little bit. They finally get to a point where they have cell reception, and you see these messages pop up, and you see that on her phone it says, you know, my phone, find my phone is activated, or you got a message from Find My Phone. They get through like a little tunnel, and she sits down, and he's trying to help her like sit down, and George comes out of nowhere because of the Find My Phone app, and basically thinks that Danny's hurting her and shoots Danny. Danny ends up in the hospital, basically critically ill, like in the ICU, and basically Amy has this moment of like, he is that soulmate, you know, not necessarily romantic, but he is that soulmate to me. Like he understands. He's the only person in this whole world that understands the journey that I've been through. And she gets on the bed and puts his arm, or her arm, and her leg like kind of over him, like holding him. And he kind of has to move thus far. He like kind of raises his hand and puts it over her. So it's this final moment of beautiful embrace because they are the only fucked up people that really do share this freaking crazy experience.
I mean, just from what you said, because I definitely don't remember that hospital scene. And again, I could have been on, I mean,
The
again,
drugs.
I was taking medications and that was definitely fun. I think I even told you, Ramon, I'm like, I think I was kind of like also myself hallucinating during that last episode. But no, that's interesting, man, because I would definitely, again, if they move with a season two, because I legitimately thought it ended on
Yeah.
like the screen went to black and you just don't know what happened to Danny. So like now I kind of have to go back. So I'm like, oh, okay, I guess he's okay. So I don't have to worry about him because I know he's
Hmm.
alive. But it would be interesting to see them either try to build a relationship because clearly, she's already slept with the brother. The husband knows what he was kind of like pretending to be his friend. So it's just like it would be interesting to like for them to try to develop something or maybe move forward with doing some conning themselves. So I don't know if they're sufficiently how this show has done just because Netflix is really bad about even telling you numbers, telling you whether something has been greenlit for a second season, or it could be that it's like, hey, this was like a one thing season because it definitely wrapped it up, especially based on how you describe that ending. So
Yeah.
if we didn't get a second season, I wouldn't be mad at all because I could just go right now and see that
No.
final scene and really get some
Yeah.
closure on it.
That's where my conflict enters. I don't know what the second season would be about, but if they step up to the challenge, I hope it's great because this show, like the season alone, is all I need. I don't need anything else. But if they do someone like another season, then good luck to them and don't disappoint me.
Any any last thoughts, Ro, before
Yeah,
we?
yeah. So like overall, like honestly, I I'm glad that you brought up doing this episode, because if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have finished it. And I loved it. Like I seriously loved it. I loved all the symbolism that they had. I love how different and how they changed it throughout. Like it wasn't like one show. It was like a combination of a lot of different things. I love kind of like how the central theme was like depression, and how like how shitty it was for them, and then kind of like how it can affect people, because it does, and kind of affects everything about them and their mood, and kind of how they act towards other people. But also kind of like the trauma, the generational stuff that happens with parents, and kind of how they're trying to avoid doing that with like with Junie, and then kind of how Danny was doing that with her brother, and then kind of how you have these two different aspects from the two different classes, like the rich and the poor guy, and so many things
So many.
that I loved, and I love how they did it, and it was beautiful and it was wonderful, and everybody should watch it.
No, that with me, just 'cause we were already in that hour mark, for me, just what I want to say about it is that I do like this show a lot. I think there was a lot to it. I think had this show maybe been on a week to week basis, it could have probably done a lot more for me. The fact that it's just like again, this is more on Netflix things. The fact that they just kind of give it to you, you talk about it for a weekend. I'm glad that Ramon, you have thankfully people that you've been able to like continuously talk about the show. Whereas with me, like I watched it, I enjoyed it. If it wasn't for you, I probably would have also just kind of like I kind of had dropped the show, and I probably would have forgotten about it. But it's not because the show is not memorable. It's just the fact that Netflix just continues to do this thing where it's like I give you shows. We did a you discussion where like I didn't jump on that train till like maybe there was four seasons, and you became memorable for me because I watched four seasons of Joe. So I think with this show, if we get another season and we get a little bit more of like this careful storytelling, I think this show could be make it potentially to be one of Netflix's like top 10 shows ever, because I think the popularity, hopefully the popularity was there. I couldn't give you ratings about it, but I do hope that we do hear something about it because again, I love Stephen Young. I think Amy Wong is somebody right now that's very, very popular. She's a very successful
Ali Wong.
woman. Ali Wong, Ramon, you got into my head. But I hopefully, we hear about that second season in the future.
Yeah, and then one last thing, if you really want to challenge yourselves and you want a different perspective on this show too, really, really pay attention to the titles and the paintings in the beginning of every episode.
Oh
Um,
Oh,
yeah, the
that's
paintings
another
were
thing.
good.
The paintings, I
and that's
loved
another
them.
thing. I mean, I went to many art shows, and I could tell you, you always try to you see the titles, and you're always like, really, where do you see the title in the painting? And I think I did that throughout every single episode, and it just makes it a different experience as well because it makes the show even deeper. So again, if you haven't seen it, watch it. If you're gonna watch it for the second time, pay attention to those titles and the paintings because there's things in the paintings that relate to the episode and the title. And again, I don't need another season, but if they do, just again, well, I'm excited. So
No, yeah, and if you guys like looking at terrible people. Another show that me and Ro were kind of watching right now is Succession, and that's also deals with terrible, shitty people that you do not root for and just want them to fail and die misery. So that's another show if you really like beef. But it's also a very, very good show. But anyways, this has been Carlos,
Ramon.
Raul.
and have a good night, people.
Hey.
Talk to you guys.